Hello. I want to deal with a comment that's come up. John Zoo says, "How do older people remember the Ten Commandments, yet no one remembers politicians' pledges? Maybe we believed in the first and thought the second was covered by the ninth commandment." Well, of course, I think that's a reference to not bearing false witness, and that the Ten Commandments is far more confusing than you think. You think you know them, but the Ten Commandments come out in at least two different forms, possibly three if you take Exodus 34. But the two main forms of the Ten Commandments to be found in Exodus 20 and Deuteronomy 5. And there are significant differences. Essentially, the Protestant traditions and Judaism follow Exodus 20, which is where we get the ninth commandment as "do not bear false witness," and the Catholic tradition takes Deuteronomy, where it would be the eighth commandment, which is about not lying. And so there's that ambiguity. Even in the first commandment, no, not the first commandment, the fourth commandment or the third commandment, depending on your understanding, about the Sabbath, the rabbis get very concerned about the difference between remember the Sabbath in Exodus 20 and keep the Sabbath in Deuteronomy 5. There are some traditions going back very early. I think it's one of the traditions preserved in the Talmud that both keep and remember were said by God and were heard simultaneously. Another idea is because the tablets were delivered by Moses in two. There were two tablets. They were recorded differently. Of course, if you follow the tradition of Mel Brooks in The History of the World Part 2, there were three tablets. I've got these 15, bang, 10 commandments, and he dropped one. It's a lovely moment where he looks like Charlton Heston in the Ten Commandments. Rabbi Lunchitz says that the Torah was offered first to the world and then to the Jews, and that explains the change. There are also those who say, this is about the difference in God's words and Moses' interpretation of God's words. And the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Menachem Mendel Schneerson, said that there are two aspects of the Bible. There's our relationship with the divine and our relationship with one another. I would say that's already in the traditions of both versions of the Ten Commandments. The first part of the Ten Commandments is about our relationship with God, and the second part is our relationship with each other. So if you take the Protestant tradition first, and the enumeration, the first commandment is to have no gods. The second commandment is to have no graven images. You can see why Catholicism isn't so keen on that. The third, do not take the name of the Lord in vain. The fourth, to remember the Sabbath. The fifth, to honor mother and father. The sixth, do not murder rather than kill. Seventh, do not commit adultery. Eighth, do not steal. Ninth, do not bear false witness, do not lie. 10th, do not covet your neighbor's goods. And this is very much the Hebrew tradition, whereas the tradition which is preserved very much in Greek, in the Septuagint, and then in Latin, and is favored in the Catholic tradition, is the Deuteronomy version. So the first commandment is there are no other gods, the principle of monotheism. The second commandment is do not take the name of the Lord in vain. The third commandment, keep holy the Sabbath. The fourth, honor your mother and father. The fifth, do not kill, do not murder. It's much more extreme. The sixth, do not commit adultery. The seventh, do not steal. The eighth, do not bear false witness. The ninth, do not covet your neighbor's wife. The 10th, do not covet your neighbor's goods. I must say, I don't see the difference in the Deuteronomy system between number 6 and number 9. But the big difference is the absence of the graven images, and the importance of the icon, the importance of the image of God is of course central both in the Orthodox tradition and in the Catholic tradition, and that human beings are in the image of God as well. So that's the difference between the two versions of the Ten Commandments. So when Jonzo says, how do older people remember the Ten Commandments? The answer is they don't. The answer is there's confusion even there. Once you get beyond 3, as I keep saying, you can't remember. You can't remember. There's ambiguity. And I think this is a demonstration of that ambiguity and that problem. 10 Commandments, too many to remember, too many to get absolutely right, too many to be sure that you're preserving what was actually said and what was actually commanded. Nobody can be certain. So 3 versions, great variety, great confusion, and it's certainly not as clear as people believe.